The tiny pub, situated at the other side of the pier, certainly it didn't change. It was still a welcoming and popular local. There was a dance hall open further uptown, and Jack had promised Rose to some dances whilst they're here. They hadn't been dancing as a married couple yet. There was so much to do in so little time. After Jack and Rose downed a couple of beers, Jack had led Rose to the roller coaster. She had screamed until she thought her lungs could give out. She laughed until her face hurts, and her hair was flapping all the way all over the place. But she didn't give a damn. Her stomach churned and churned over and over as they read it 4 more times in a row. Rose had professed that she had a cast iron stomach and couldn't throw up easily. Jack was quite the opposite and made himself ill after another twice on the roller coaster. It was like magic. She felt so free, like if she was flying for real. Jack had had her squeals of laughter and joy. This was the happiest thing he's ever seen her. The familiar glow that had returned to her cheeks, and the fire was back. The fiery woman had once fell in love with back here with him. Nothing could take her away again. By the late afternoon, the sun was already beginning to set on, and what was the best days of their life. Anne had telegrammed Rose telling her that Maggie was doing all right, and sent her the best wishes. Rose had always loved hearing news about Anne about her daughter. She was the dearest little thing. Her small giggles made Rose melt inside. At just a young age, Rose had thought that being a parent, it wouldn't have suited her, and she was scared of not being a good parent. But as soon as she held her wailing daughter in her arms for the first time, she knew this was the path fate that she chose her. Jack had promised to take Rose dancing that evening. He had gone out late to evening snack while wait for them Rose had dressed. She had opened her very tiny small wardrobe, scanned inside. 5 dresses, all she had with her. She had been reluctant to bring that many, selecting the most fancy ones that she owned, a dark purple one with 3/4 sleeves and matching lilac shawl. Rose dressed herself. The full length of the mirror showed her reflection, a girl of 18 who had just been through so much but faced to shown biggest smile she's ever seen. She was finally happy. Rose fiddled around with the small chest of the drawers and found what she was looking for. She carefully applied some rouge and lipstick, and she hadn't worn makeup since the day before Maggie was born, and so she decided to make an effort for Jack. Spraying a small amount of perfume around her neck, Rose sighed as she was happy with her reflection. As she finished printing and pinning up her hair, there was a knock at a door. Intrigued, Rose went to answer it. Who would knock at this time? They knew no one. Jack wasn't due back for another half hour. Upon opening the door, Rose gasped in surprise. It was Jack, stood in his Sunday best, a black blazer and trousers with a crisp white shirt. Were the most expensive items owned, and every single rose hung from his mouth, and he wiggled his eyebrows comically. "Good evening, Miss Dawson." Jack handed her the rose before taking her left hand into his and kissing it tenderly. "Hello," Rose replied, quite not knowing what to say. Jack was up to something, and she knew it. "You look stunning." Rose blushed slightly. She always told her that she was beautiful, and she was never quite used to compliments, but tonight she felt good. Rose placed one of the roses on the dresser before heading out the door. It was quite a walk from the hotel to the dance hall, but Rose didn't care. She took everything around her, the streets, the houses, the people. Everything was new to her. The music blared out from Newton Dance Hall, and the band there played everything from classical to Irish gigs. The night they spent dancing rapidly to the songs they didn't even recognize, dancing steps they didn't even know, Rose's wild copper curls flying carelessly, Jack's hands into hers. Sitting back at the table they occupied, Rose breathed heavily. They had just finished the Irish gig, and Rose loved Irish music, and loved her visit there the year before. It was so cultured and so historical. Nobody cared what people thought, as long as they were happy. Irish immigrants and she had met aboard the Titanic had been friendly and gracious people. She would love to go back there one day. She face was flushed with her hair was everywhere. Most of her makeup had rubbed off and her dress was slightly ripped at the bottom, but she didn't care. Jack appeared with another 2 beers for both of them. She knew she drank a little more than usual tonight, but she didn't care. Drowning at least half of her beer, Jack smiled. He knew that she could drink a beer or 2. Sometimes he even joked about her drinking more than him. Soft music began, slow and soft. The lights dimmed lightly, and the couples of men and women began to retreat to the dance floor. They guided elegantly and swayed to the soft music. Jack gazed at Rose in lower light. It was the right after earlier. She certainly did look stunning. Her hair was so fiery, her glittering blue eyes, even out of breath, and even the dance from her hair tangles, he thought that she was beautiful. All the other men in the room had gasped in awe as soon as they seen her. Some of them were gossiping, and even stirred their feelings inside Jack. Not jealousy, far from it, for he was the one who had longed for his princess, who wanted nothing more than to rescue her and make her happy, and now he was succeeding. The feelings that were of him were proud of her and happiness, happy that she was happy and that she was his wife, and they would be forever. He would never call her his, but it was almost like she was his possession. She was a person, with feelings and the right to do what she wants and when she wants, not to be told what to do like some servant. The music continued, and Rose was finally feeling Jack's eyes on her gaze up. She smiled gently. His face was full of love. He held his hand out to her, and she took it gently and rose from her seat. He led her to the dance floor, where the other couples were dancing too. He began to lead her to a waltz, slow, sensual waltz. Rose held on to Jack's hands and shoulders as Jack held her waist. He slowly guided her across the floor as she followed. It had been years since they danced this way, and she almost forgotten how. She loved dancing, especially as a child that she took in ballet classes up to being 12 years old. She had also learned to play the piano and the violin. She loved the music all of her life. Something never go away. No matter what the fate leads to a person's life, her love for music and dancing would never fade. Jack held onto Rose's waist tighter and pulled closer to his body. He gazed down at her lovingly, and she was surprised at how well he could lead. Another hidden talent of Jack Dawson. Rose shuddered slightly as Jack adjusted his fingers to her waist. Then he moved closer and closer to him and leant her head on his shoulder. As he lightly kissed the top of it, she could feel the sensations inside of her that hadn't seemed to be going away for the past few days. She hadn't felt them this strong in a while. Gently she felt Jack's fingers slowly and softly begin to run through her hair. She closed her eyes, feeling the closeness between them. Jack's heart began to pound, and it was overcome by emotions and love for this woman who stand beside him, dancing. He slowly and softly kissed the top of her head once more as she removed her head from his shoulders and gazed fixedly at her husband's eyes. She had felt his heartbeat when she was close to him. She had felt butterflies in the world that seemed to disappear as he lowered his head and gently kissed her lips. It was a soft, long, and sweet kiss, enough to boil over Rose's emotions. She hadn't felt anything like this since, Maggie was conceived. That one time and only day they made love, Rose had a feeling that tonight may be special. Pulling away, Jack pulled Rose closer to him again and kissed her hair. "I love you," he whispered softly into her hair. But of course, he was unsure if she heard him, but wanted to say it at the right moment. It was all that he felt. Rose awoke later than usual the morning of April 7th. She was excited and ready for what the next day held. She had remembered Jack's words that he spoke a long time ago. "I love waking up in the morning, not knowing what's going to happen. Who am I going to meet? And what's lined up? And she understood exactly how he felt. Jack stirred from his sleep, but turned onto his side and faced Rose, resting her head back on the pillow. She softly stroked the small strands of hair from his sleeping face. A smile appeared on her face, remembering the night when it had been the best night of her life. They had made love for the first time in almost a year, and Rose felt the same unfamiliar feelings that she had in the night of April 14th, 1912. Her heart had pounded the entire time. She had never been so nervous. Back then she had been a child, impulsive and spontaneous, but now she was a woman with a child. Her body had certainly changed in some areas since giving birth to her daughter. Marks around her stomach and her chest was larger than usual due to her feeding her child. But Jack had embraced on each mark line on her body, kissing her gently, and it was low and sensational, and she never wanted to end. All these months, not making love had killed Jack. He wanted to show his wife how much he loved her, to be closer to her and make her feel as she wanted. But she had shunned him for a long time, mostly due to her pregnancy, and the fact that she didn't even feel ready to be touched in that way again. Not since that night. It had affected her in more ways than she ever thought imaginable. They had taken precautions, though, to make sure she didn't conceive another child just yet. She definitely wanted more children, but for now she wants to concentrate on Maggie and the new life she was adjusting to. Feeling a gentle hand touching his face, Jack rose from his slumber and opened his sleepy eyes to Rose's smiley face. He too had smiled. It was contagiously, for the previous nights that had been magic. Their lovemaking had turned out to be one of the best experiences that he's ever had. He had loved her in a way neither of them had thought was possible. All their time apart had not been able to touch her hand or make him feel even more eager to make special, and my God, it was. Jack moved his arm and gently touched her lower back, before planting a lingering kiss on Rose's lips. "Good morning, darling," Rose smirked. "Hey, you," Jack sighed, before turning and stretching. "Last night was," Rose trailed off. "The night had been unexplainable. Beautiful," Jack answered for her. His eyes shone over the morning sunlight. The day was warm again, and it was another perfect day. The beach was almost empty except for a small round man with a horse tied up with reins. Jack had recognized the man instantly for who it was, the same man who 6 years before who had lent him the horse for an hour to ride around the surf. Jack immediately pulled Rose in the direction of the man, and she followed him intrigued. "Hey," Jack greeted, smiling as he held out his hand. The man obviously didn't recognize him, so he just cut straight to the chase. "How much for a horse ride, sir?" Jack asked. Rose's mouth opened and looked up at the great horse. 20 cents for an hour. Are you interested?" the small man asked, looking somewhat bored. He twiddled his dirty thumbs around the circular motion. "Yes, indeed I am. We'll take him for an hour, sir. Thank you." Jack tossed the man 20 cents before untying the horse with his reins from the fence and lead him towards further across the beach. Rose was frightened. "How on earth can I ride this, Jack? Look how tall he is." He was at least 17 hands high. He was a beauty, black in color, his hair glistened in the sun. "Don't worry, he's sturdy. Trust me?" "All right." Trust was one of Jack's biggest traits. Rose knew to always put her trust in him. Jack had held Rose's hand as she pulled up her skirts and climbed onto the stirrups that lifted her onto the steed. Her heart pounded hard, from the nerves to the fact that she was actually doing this. It almost felt like a dream. "Now put your other leg over, Rose," Jack instructed. Rose laughed as she straddled the horse as the man would. "So this is what it's like to be a man," Rose teased. Jack gazed at her and saw her beautiful face, so full of happiness. Jack almost wanted to burst with pride, as he had been so proud of her. Adjusting the skirts around her, Rose looked straight ahead. Off into the distance, the sun was about to set. Brilliant shades of red, orange, and yellow merged and created a magical sunset. Rose let out a small squeal of joy before beckoning Jack to climb up and ride with her. She had never controlled a horse before and was a little afraid, so Jack climbed on behind her and took the reins. The horse slowly began to walk forward, and Rose giggled hysterically. This was a whole new experience to her. When Rose felt comfortable, she gently took over, holding the reins in Jack's arms and slid around her waist as she rested his chin on her shoulder. She could gently kiss him and kiss her cheek, and the smile would be on her face would widen. Her heart soared. The horse slowly trotted across the warm sandy beach, the warm breeze that caused her red curls to blow freely. Another giggle and squeal escaped her lips. She let her hand and left hand gently entwine, and she caressed her fingers softly before playing with her wedding band. Rose tilted her head slightly. Her face met Jack's. His breath tickled her cheek, and his eyes darted from the glistering eyes to the shot and the full, soft, slightly parted lips. He gently kissed her once and then again, before turning their attention back to the beautiful sunset before them. The horse slowly walked towards the next surf. The water splashed gently around her ankles on the stirrups. Rose looked out to sea. It was amazingly blue. It seemed to be endless. Right into the distance, it was pure blueness. She shivered slightly, and she had always loved the sea, but certain events at certain times had changed that. This is it, Rose, the horizon, and it's ours, and now and forever. Rose felt a single tear slide down to her porcelain cheek. They had been talked off this moment. They even fought and dreamed of it. But in reality, it was even more wonderful. This was an indescribable feeling. Nothing had prepared her for this moment. She was lucky that she knew that this life she thought that once upon a time wasn't worth living had turned into perfection.